Hi, welcome back, guys. This is your friend the Fanfics back with amazing fanfiction. This is this series of What If Deku Had a Fire Quirk and Trained by Endeavour. Izuku didn't tell Hisashi, but he preferred to go training with Endeavour than go home and wash the dishes. He knew his old man would be violent, even if he chose to help him. Todoroki had heard everything. He hadn't intended to, but if he showed himself from where he was standing, it would be like he did want to listen to their conversation. Midoriya and Bakugo knew each other since their childhood, he had noted. They seemed to have a very rocky relationship, and it seemed like there had been a particular incident where Izuku underestimated Bakugo in their childhood. He wanted to laugh. It had been years, and somehow still didn't get over it. It was ridiculous. He once again couldn't help but feel sympathy for his classmate. He could definitely bet Midoriya hadn't done anything worth this anger. Just another piece of trash in this hero society, he thought as he walked home. Shadow dragged himself out of bed, still half asleep, and made his way towards the front door, curious about the persistent ringing. As he approached, he heard a slurred voice, and the situation became increasingly clear. Hisashi, Izuku's father, stood there, visibly drunk and belligerent. Shadow's eyes widened in surprise and concern as he listened to the man's harsh words, spoken with anger and frustration. "He's a useless nobody," Hisashi ranted, his voice carrying through the microphone of the intercom. "He can't even do simple chores around the house. Always too busy with that hero nonsense." Shadow had initially assumed that Hisashi was just another unwelcome visitor, maybe a Juki. Still, as he continued to listen, he realized the man was Izuku's father. The venom in Hisashi's words made it clear that their relationship was far from healthy. Shadow hesitated, unsure of what to do. He felt no desire to call Izuku and tell him about the unwanted presence at the door, since that would make him feel mortified. He also didn't trust this stranger at all. He was clearly in no state to be rational, and came off as violent. However, there was the possibility the man would stay there until Midoriya finished his training, and chances were that not warning him about the regrettable specimen waiting for him at the door would be by miles worse. What should Shadow do? Shadow found himself in a difficult situation. He couldn't ignore the fact that Hisashi's presence and demeanor were concerning, and the venom in his words hinted at a potentially dangerous situation. At the same time, he was torn between respecting Izuku's privacy and ensuring his safety. He wanted to call the cops so bad, but he felt like this would only mean an added danger for Izuku. The man clearly seemed to be abusive with his own kid. If he always got this drunk, calling the cops would only give him a reason to beat his own kid, he realized. But if he told Midoriya, he would just go home with his drunk father, who was in no rational state of mind and seemed to want to beat up Midoriya for some reason. Not cleaning the dishes, he had heard. He found himself wanting to chuckle at the absurdity of it all. But he didn't at all. The situation was far too somber and uncomfortably reminiscent of his own experiences. Midoriya was still training. He checked by all the noise downstairs. He would never know he was the one to call the cops. Izuku didn't know what to make of Hisashi's prolonged absence. Maybe he had passed out outside of some bar and someone found him and decided to call emergencies. Or perhaps he had simply left, giving up on whatever angry tirade he had planned for the evening. On the contrary, it meant he could enjoy a day without him, no one hurrying him up to go to school, or to obsessively talk about his quirk for no reason other than to compare himself to him. No sarcastic remarks about how disheveled his appearance looked that one morning, nor intrusive questions about his quirk performance at school, or even hide his uniform or school bag just for the fun of it. He could rejoice in a quiet breakfast. Shadow wasn't sure if he did the right thing, but he had realized that whatever he would do would end up in that man being angry at Izuku for whatever reason. At least he had guaranteed his safety and avoided problems. Midoriya wouldn't know it was him, God forbid. He couldn't help but stare at him in class. Did his father beat him? Or was he just a drunk man Did he already know about him going to prison? Did his father take it on him? He seemed to act normal. Was he unaware, or he was simply used to his dad going to prison? Questions attacked Shadow, curiosity lingering for longer than it should. He needed to clear his mind. He was sure his staring wasn't going unnoticed by the strange looks Uraraka shot him. He quickly averted his gaze. Midoriya Izuku seemed to be a dilemma with plenty of secrets. He couldn't help but notice he didn't dislike him as much. He still disliked him for trying so hard to impress Endeavour. But besides that, there was no grudges. Was he feeling sympathy? He didn't want to feel pity, since he wouldn't like to be pitied either. But maybe there was nothing wrong about sympathy. He knew what it was like to have an unstable parent. Today, the whole class was going to the USJ facilities. Uraraka had sat next to Izuku, both of them listening to the chatter in the bus in silence. I didn't think it would be this type of bus. Ida regretted having insisted about the seating positions. It was all in vain. The seatings were in an opposite-facing configuration. Some people laughed, clearly finding funny his obsession with order. Glad Bakugo isn't here. He would have totally ruined the vibes, Kaminari said, smiling, clearly relieved. Bakugo was suspended with a warning after punching Midoriya, and everyone clearly being able to see it through the cameras. Yeah, I have no idea what they were saying, but the guy looked so mad at you, Midoriya. You didn't even seem to do anything to piss him off, Kirishima replied. It's kinda peaceful when he is not around. As the conversation on the bus continued, Mina Ashido, known for her blunt honesty, couldn't resist sharing her perspective. Let's face it, guys. Bakugo's personality is just trash. I mean, who wants to put up with his constant anger and superiority complex? A few students nodded in agreement, and some even chuckled at Mina's candid assessment. Bakugo's reputation for having a difficult personality was well established, and not everyone had a high tolerance for his behavior. What is up with hitting your own teammate? He is nuts. Even Ida chimed on, known for his strong sense of justice. Todoroki observed how the whole class trash talked behind Bakugo's back. It was satisfying to see. He didn't even care about anyone's safety when he exploded that building. And even if it was Midoriya's idea, he blamed it mostly on Bakugo. He could have exploded it further away from them, thus avoiding them getting caught in the range of the explosion. Whatever. He was expelled for a week. It wasn't enough, in his opinion. After all, destroying their property and beating up one of their students for no good reason. He sent a discreet look to Midoriya. He seemed strangely uncomfortable by the topic. Shadow wondered if Izuku's sympathy for Bakugo stemmed from their long history together. Despite Bakugo's apparent resentment, or whatever terrible connection they might share, it wasn't his business whatsoever. They arrived to the USJ facilities, received by the Pro Hero 13. Everyone was excited about her apparition, and they were even more fascinated discovering USJ's huge training space. So this is USJ, Midoriya murmured, intimidated. This is a training camp I fabricated. A shipwreck. A landslide. She started presenting every single zone, a fire, a windstorm, and more. I made it for different types of accidents and disasters. 13 proceeded to explain why All Might wasn't present. He had a long day at work. She started to explain her quirk, which allowed her to turn things into dust. This is a quirk that can kill easily. Please do not forget your abilities can be very dangerous. And you shall learn to use your quirk carefully, along with the help of Aizawa and All Might to discover more hidden aspects about your powers. As 13 spoke about the importance of using their quirks responsibly, emphasizing the potential dangers, there was a sudden and eerie interruption. The training facility was plunged into darkness as the electricity was abruptly cut. Unbeknownst to the heroes in training, the power outage was not a simple technical glitch. It was the work of Kurogiri, a mysterious villain with a power to manipulate and warp space. Through the use of his warp quirk, he had created a portal in the darkness, one that led to an entirely different and hostile location. As the students watched in bewilderment, the portal expanded, revealing a chaotic and nightmarish landscape on the other side. Out of the portal emerged a group of sinister figures, shrouded in darkness, their malevolent intentions clear. The villains had arrived, and they had infiltrated the USJ facility through Kurogiri's portal, catching the students and even 13 off guard. Panic and chaos ensued, as the students realized that their training day had taken an unexpected and dangerous turn. 13 and the students found themselves facing a dire situation, unprepared and outnumbered as they confronted the sinister villains who had just emerged through the portal. Mina and Kirishima, their heroic instincts kicking in, were the first to react. With unwavering determination, they charged at Kurogiri, the sinister figure responsible for the portal. Their quirks came to life, Mina's acid and Kirishima's hardened skin, as they launched an attack on the villain. Kurogiri, caught off guard by the students' swift response, attempted to create a portal to evade their assault. But before he could disappear into the darkness, Mina's acid splashed over his hand, causing him to grimace in pain. Kirishima's hardened fist collided with Kurogiri's face, causing a satisfying thud. However, Kurogiri's resilience was apparent. He managed to complete the portal, creating a dark and swirling vortex. As he stepped backward into the portal, the two heroic students couldn't stop themselves in time. With a horrified look on their faces, they were pulled into the portal alongside Kurogiri. Panic continued to spread among the remaining students and 13 as they watched their classmates get trapped. Before they could react, the chaotic landscape on the other side of the portal began to swallow everything in its path. Trees, rocks, and even sections of the USJ training facility were pulled into the vortex. Shoto and Izuku, who had remained close to each other, suddenly felt a powerful force pulling them. Despite their best efforts to resist, they too were dragged into the portal. The sensation was disorienting, and as the world around them twisted and contorted, they found themselves hurtling through the portal's Inkai void. The next thing they knew, Shoto and Izuku landed with a jolt on uneven terrain. They looked around to find themselves in a mountainous region. The portal had deposited them in a place that was anything but familiar. As they gazed at the rugged landscape, they realized that they had been separated from their classmates and the chaos unfolding at the USJ. Their priority now was to find their way back and join the fight against the sinister villains who had just infiltrated their training grounds. This must be the landslide 13 was speaking about. Izuku broke the silence. He felt increasing anxiety. The villains must have a reason to be here, especially if they figured out a way to break US security. Would Uraraka be okay? She was the first friend she made in years. His worry must have been shown on his face, because Todoroki quickly replied, "We should regroup with the others. Surely someone knows what is going on." They stood up from the ground and walked around the house's ruins. They went walking in a comfortable silence. It was way too peaceful, suspiciously so. To their surprise, they didn't hear anything until they were in the woods. Spine-chilling screams echoed in the direction of Central Plaza, originating from a girl. Izuku felt his face go pale, realizing that it had to be one of his classmates. Todoroki appeared horrified as well, the piercing screams affecting him too. They exchanged a glance before nodding and rushed towards the source of the noise. When they arrived, they found Uraraka on the ground, while a muscular creature twisted her arm, its torso bare and wearing khaki shorts. It had a head with a bird's beak, and its brain was visible. Neither of the two had ever seen such a being, and a shiver ran down their spines. The creature appeared like a failed laboratory experiment, a hybrid between a bird and a person with musculature like All Might's. It seemed to lack any intelligence in its vacant eyes, and began to slam Ochako's head against the ground forcefully. This could result in a severe concussion. Izuku immediately unleashed his fire at the beast, and to his horror, he realized it was futile. The creature continued to beat its head like a relentless metronome, reminding them that time was running out. Todoroki, during those precious seconds, had gotten close enough to create an ice barrier between the creature and Uraraka, blocking its access to them for a valuable moment. In that second, Todoroki hastily dragged an unconscious Ochako across the ground due to the urgency, sliding on ice as he carried her. Loud blows reverberated against the thick ice wall, and soon it was shattered. Incredibly alarmed, knowing that Todoroki could create solid ice walls, having witnessed it during training when Bakugo exploded the building, Izuku resorted to a strategy he had devised himself: the wall of fire. Izuku took charge of creating a long barrier between them as he ran alongside Todoroki, both deciding that the safest course of action was to retreat without the need for words. However, the creature hadn't given up, and trotting like a quadruped, it quickly caught up with Izuku, seizing his ankle, and he started tossing him around like a ragdoll. Izuku yelled in pain, and then the experiment threw him to a tree. Todoroki saw it and yelled his name. This couldn't be happening. He wasn't going to lose two of his classmates on one occasion. Quickly regaining his foot, his head pounding and his stance unsteady, Izuku jumped and hugged the creature, grabbing at his eyes and turning his body on fire. Clearly in pain, the creature reached behind and threw him once again to the ground. The beast pounced, ready to end him, even if it was momentarily blind. Uraraka, wake up! Deathly pale, Uraraka was in his arms. Shoto realized that once again, he would have to make a decision. Should he leave Uraraka in some shelter and hope for the best and go back to save Izuku? Or should he find his classmates and regroup? Before Shoto could start sweating even more due to the added pressure, he encountered Tsuyu on her own. Todoroki-kun, here, Tsuyu spoke. She had been hiding in a bush. Froppy, I need you to take Uraraka to a safe place. Get out of here as fast as you can. Shoto assigned the task, his voice firm, surprising even himself as he gestured to pass Uraraka into Froppy's arms. Despite her shocked state at the sight of Uraraka unconscious with a bleeding wound on her head, Tsuyu quickly embraced Uraraka, able to bear her weight even though Uraraka was taller than her. Where are you going? You can't go alone. It's too dangerous. Come with me. There's no time. Please, find help and tell them there's a creature with a power capable of rivaling all mights. Without pausing to observe her reaction, Todoroki ran back, his heart in an inconsolable arrhythmia. Every step echoed the urgency pulsating within him, a desperate rhythm matching the beats of his racing heart. Images of Deku in danger fueled the fire within, igniting a fierce resolve to reach him in time. The weight of concern and responsibility pressed heavily on his chest, each breath fueled by the determination to save his friend. The world around him blurred, leaving only the singular focus of reaching Deku before it was too late. Izuku recalled all the movements that Endeavour had taken the time to teach him, and soon he created a fire arrow, Endeavour's technique, ignited arrow, embedding it into the creature's eyes. It had regenerated. He had hoped to be able to rival such a being by provoking its loss of vision. But no. That thing could regenerate at will. He realized he needed to buy time. Someone had to arrive. The heroes. The teachers. Someone. Screaming in pain, the creature blindly advanced towards him, and Izuku dodged, throwing his body to the left on the plaza ground. He knew he had been noisy, so he quickly ran in the opposite direction. The creature's hand collided with the ground in the exact position he had been in. His eyes grew back as if they hadn't been burned seconds ago. Fast, Izuku reacted and created a blinding flash from his palms. The creature, momentarily blinded, attacked in the wrong direction. He waved his hand and soon there was a barrier of fire between them. The beast stepped on the intense blue fire, as if it were nothing. This creature wasn't human, though due to its anatomy, at some point it was indeed human, Izuku thought. It moved without intelligence, not bothering to avoid the surely painful barriers Izuku built. But there was also another possibility. It didn't feel pain at all, because it had built such resistance that this level of fire was nothing. None of his attacks would cause any effect if the beast didn't feel any pain. Izuku rolled to dodge an attack, the beast regenerating its eyes. He couldn't afford to think about these things. It had to work, simply because if it didn't, he would be dead. Izuku generated flames from his palms and shot them to the creature's brain. It didn't cause any effect. He created blinding flashes of intense light, forcing Namu to stumble and thrash in confusion. Yet, to his dismay, Namu showed no signs of distress or pain, just as he thought. It became evident that the creature was immune to the sensory disruptions caused by the fire. This revelation sent a chill down Izuku's spine. The creature was invulnerable. He didn't want to die so young. He was just 60, Christ. He knew that was way too young. He didn't want to leave this world before he proved Shadow Todoroki wrong. He couldn't bear the thought of departing this world without shattering Todoroki's emotional barriers and forging a connection as friends, to end this absurd rivalry Endeavour had forced upon them. It came to his mind the welcoming smile Uraraka had when they met again at the classroom. He didn't want to leave them behind. However, despite his efforts to outmaneuver the blinded creature, Namu seized Izuku before he could roll out of harm's way. The relentless grip of Namu tightened around him, showcasing the creature's relentless determination, even in the face of disorientation. Izuku set his whole body on fire, but it was to no avail. The creature didn't even flinch at the intense heat. Midoriya! A familiar voice screamed in panic, and soon enough the beast's arms were encased on frost, allowing Izuku to escape from his grip. The air crackled with tension as Shadow and Izuku faced the menacing Namu, its monstrous form ready for a battle to the death. Flames danced around Izuku's determined figure, his fiery powers ready to clash with the abomination before him. Shadow stood firm, the contrast of his ice and fire quirks creating an aura of controlled power. The air crackled with tension as Shadow and Izuku faced the menacing beast, its monstrous form ready for a battle to the death. Flames danced around Izuku's determined figure, his fiery powers ready to clash with the abomination before him. Shadow and Midoriya stood firm side by side. Izuku launched the first assault, unleashing a barrage of searing flames in an attempt to blind it. The creature, unaffected by pain, pressed forward with relentless determination. Shadow, strategically positioning himself, created walls of ice to deflect its advances. The dance of fire and ice unfolded, the battlefield a canvas of elemental clashes. Shadow's ice met the creature's brute force, creating crystalline barriers that shimmered in the fiery glow. The Namu, however, proved relentless. Its regenerative abilities shrugged off the effects of the scorching flames and freezing ice. The relentless onslaught continued, and despite their coordinated efforts, Shadow and Izuku found themselves struggling. Left, Izuku predicted, and Todoroki dodged an especially deadly attack that made the floor crack. "We must continue to buy time," Shadow shouted, trying to motivate themselves. "We could die at any minute, but we won't. Not if you keep blinding this thing, and I keep freezing its feet," he kept yelling, out of air, just in time after the beast freed itself from the frozen trap Shadow had encased it in. "Just a few more minutes and the pros will come." "Todoroki, shut up, he can hear you." Midoriya couldn't believe this. He knew they could die. What was the point of saying it? What a terrible speech. But, strangely, he noticed it did lessen the burden he felt in his heart. If he believed in their victory, why wouldn't Midoriya? This is how Midoriya and Todoroki fought against an invulnerable beast, through the constant use of the brute force of their elements. Todoroki froze it, Midoriya finished it off, and blinded it. Both kept a safe distance while the creature struck the air. However, upon hearing the screams, the beast charged towards the source of the commotion and struck Shadow with a blow to the stomach. "Todoroki," Midoriya yelled, his voice breaking. Why did Shadow have to be so stupid out of nowhere? Then, he realized the beast had been way too close to him. Did Todoroki scream his speech to distract it? It was too late to wonder. The beast grabbed his chest and started to smash it around on the floor. And for a moment, it seemed clear that this was a fun activity to the mindless being in front of them, smashing his chest to the ground repeatedly. Todoroki had never broken a rib before, but he was sure this was what it felt like to break several. The multitude of impacts against the ground was painful and brutal. Horror-stricken, Shoto realized that the worst thing he could have done to protect them was to distract them, because Midoriya immediately approached and burned the eyes of the creature, who blinded him, provoking the release of Todoroki. The beast grabbed Midoriya instead, throwing him to the central plaza wall bricks at a speed that made Todoroki's heart sink. Shoto struggled to get up from the ground, ignoring the excruciating pain in his ribcage, his body almost frozen. He couldn't even regulate his temperature anymore, his ice feeble, far from the formidable solid ice rock that had managed to hold this creature in place for 4 Mississippi seconds. Just as he was about to stand, the creature seemed to remember and seized his head, throwing him alongside Midoriya at a formidable speed. He felt the stones embedding into him like a second skin, along with the most stunning pain he had ever felt in his life despite the extreme and harsh training lessons with his father. Meanwhile, Midoriya had one eye closed with a deep bruise around it, his face covered in blood from a deep cut on his forehead that exposed raw flesh. Todoroki might just pass out right there. Well, what do we have here? The great Midoriya and Todoroki, brought to their knees by Minamu. Pathetic. You heroes think you can stand up to us, but look at you now, broken, defeated. Todoroki observed as a skeletal boy who didn't seem older than 20 spoke into the air, his disheveled light blue hair appearing unwashed for a long time, fluttering in the wind as he continued his monologue, gray hands covering his face and arms. Your lives have no value compared to the formidable machine that is Namu. You are just stones in our path, a casual loss amidst what is a magnificent plan of ours, to defeat this hypocritical society that places all its value on flashy quirks like yours. This is proof that not even you as best students can counter Namu. This is magnificent news. Neither Midoriya nor Todoroki could know his identity, but Shigaraki Tenko approached them while they were on the ground, unable to stand or move away from him when he knelt in front of Shoto. Your life, Todoroki, is just as worthless as someone without a quirk. Being Endeavor's son doesn't make you special. You're nothing more than a pawn in their twisted game, a puppet dancing to their whims. In an act of resistance, Todoroki gathered all the strength he had left and slowly placed his hands on the ground, rising enough to spit in Shigaraki's face. What the hell? Shigaraki went to kick him in the ribs, but before he could do that, fire was thrown onto his clothes. Izuku, one eye open, had been ready to defend him, and Todoroki felt relief as his heart clenched with anxiety. He couldn't move, and he was sure that if he used his ice, it would be weak. What could they do? The Namu, as the guy had called it, stood peacefully, uninterested in their chattering, but clearly ready to act if the blue-haired guy asked it to. But before he could answer these questions, he rejoiced in the way Shigaraki had to turn off the fire off his clothes with his hands, as he yelled in pain due to the heat. You are going to regret doing that, you little piece of shit. Shigaraki started to kick Midoriya in the head, repeatedly, but apparently getting increasingly angrier at his lack of response. It was very likely he had passed out from his head injury. Shoto realized he had to be the one to do something. It had been ages, and no one was coming. Maybe Tsuyu failed to deliver his message. He started to crawl, and Shigaraki had to notice because he started laughing in a frenzy as he switched to kick Midoriya on the chest. He is starting to look each day more like his father. Todoroki, in the midst of the desperate struggle against Shigaraki, is suddenly assaulted by painful memories from his childhood. As he crawls away from the threat that Shigaraki poses, haunting images of his mother pouring hot tea on his face return like unsettling specters. The burning sensation of that memory seems to blend with a fiery rage that rages within him. Todoroki, grappling with distress, forces himself to focus on the present. Channeling the intensity of his emotions, he unleashes a burst of fire from the ground, aimed directly at Shigaraki. It's as if he's challenging not only the villain in front of him, but also the demons of his own past. The fire, a manifestation of the strength he has cultivated, and his determination to overcome trauma, rises with ferocity. This act is not just a physical attack, but also a cry of resistance and emancipation. To Todoroki's absolute surprise, Namu didn't react as expected. It didn't come to defend its master, nor did it move in the slightest. Did the creature lack enough autonomy to act without instructions? With morbid fascination, Todoroki realized that Namu would no longer intervene in the course of events. Apparently, it hadn't been given sufficient instructions to react in such a situation. Shoto would have celebrated, but he was no longer able to move without feeling a sharp pain in his chest. So he simply stayed on the ground, next to Midoriya, watching as the blue-haired guy who had kicked him so many times was finally unconscious due to the impact of his fire. He would have preferred never to have to resort to using his left side. But with some relief, he realized he had no regrets. Shigaraki didn't seem like a significant threat, but he was capable of causing harm. It would be absurd to regret attacking the guy who not only seemed to be the leader of this villain organization, but also kicked his classmate multiple times. He didn't regret it at all. In fact, he felt untroubled. But there was one question. To get Namu to attack them, there would be a need to say in order to do so. And if there was already an order, why did Namu stop? Todoroki's answer came with All Might's arrival. It turned out the villain organization name was the pathetic League of Villains surname, and their main objective was to defeat All Might through the use of, as Shoto supposed, an experiment. Namu. Things didn't turn out quite well for them, since their main leader, identified as Shigaraki Tamura, got imprisoned for terrorist activities, and Namu got captured by the authorities with no resistance whatsoever, besides quite a good amount of villains that had attacked the students. Todoroki couldn't see the fight between All Might and Namu, since he got evacuated with an unconscious Midoriya as well. It seemed he had passed out from all the kicks he got in the head from Shigaraki. He had wished to be unconscious too, due to the amount of pain he had been put on by Namu. He had gotten it healed, though, by Recovery Girl. Now, he was tired, but he couldn't sleep. Midoriya was awake as well, both in the same hospital room. You were really foolish out there, Todoroki. Midoriya broke the silence. They were both laying on their beds, unmoving, and Todoroki collected the strength to sit up in the bed. Sure enough, he supposed Recovery Girl had treated his wounds, because he didn't feel any pain, nor did he struggle breath anymore. He was just tired. But now, his grogginess was replaced with stupor. What? He asked, not sure if he had heard it right. You tried to distract Namu by shouting at me, just because it was close to me. I might have had a severe concussion, but if you remember, we were doing good at that moment. Midoriya, as impertinent and bold as he was, seemed to be at loss at why Todoroki would help him at all. Doing good. I was barely able to dodge his attack, and since you screamed at me the direction to dodge, and by then he would have attacked you if I didn't do anything. I wasn't gonna just stand there and watch you get yourself killed. Todoroki realized he had raised his voice, and was about to apologize before Midoriya responded, unfazed. Nothing would have happened to me because I would have blinded him again, and he wouldn't have been able to figure out my location. He affirmed, apparently very sure of himself, but his increasingly reddening cheeks betrayed him. You have no idea if that thing wouldn't have been able to figure out where you were by your footsteps. I wasn't the one to get a concussion, and all my senses are back. So stop acting like I could have died. I just broke a few ribs. Todoroki realized how absurd that sounded, and decided to give in and recognize the truth. Well, sort of. I kind of could have died if you didn't intervene there. You might have zero sense of preservation, but your determination to beat that shit was really surprising. I think you do have the material to be a hero, if you aren't one already. Heroes sometimes have to get roughened to survive and help others, I guess, Todoroki finished, lamely, but open and honest like he had never been before. Izuku, thank God I was here. Inko kneeled in front of him, hugging with relief. Behind her, the smell of a burnt corpse lingered in the air. But Izuku, too relieved to see his mom, hugged her back. As he hugged her, Izuku felt an odd dampness against his cheek. Pulling back slightly, he looked up at his mom's face. His innocent eyes widened in realization as he saw streaks of crimson on her clothes and a hint of pain in her eyes. "Mommy, you're bleeding," Izuku whispered, concern etching his small features. His hug tightened instinctively, as if he could shield her from any harm. In that moment, his mom smiled gently, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy is strong, and heroes sometimes get a few scratches. But I'll always keep you safe." His words had wakened old memories tucked away for the best. "Thank you," Todoroki, Izuku added, a wave of nostalgia and gratitude washing over him. "The way you were so worried about Uraraka before. It was as if you didn't have any fear for yourself. You came back for me, Todoroki. I will never forget that." His emerald eyes shined with emotion. "They really did take a long time rescuing us," Todoroki said to break the silence, the pain of being stamped against the floor on his mind still. "I have heard that it took them 5 minutes to come after Asui told the heroes about this," Midoriya answered. "I can't believe we survived for that long," he said, still in disbelief. In the fury of battle, every second felt like a minute, while the hopelessness grew and grew as they realized the invulnerability of their enemy. "It's amazing that you could keep up with Namu for enough time, until I found you," Midoriya Todoroki expressed, truly impressed. "I only blinded him and kept running," he replied, feeling himself flush at the compliment. It was strange, but he attributed it to the fact that people never complimented him directly in any kind of way to avoid feeding his ego, as Bakugo called it many years ago. They were still in the hospital, but it was their last day, and they were about to leave, when a tall and broad figure stepped into the room, carrying flowers. It was All Might. Izuku immediately bowed. "Salutations, All Might." He bowed until his head met his knees, feeling how his cheeks reddened. He couldn't believe All Might came to see them. He was so busy. "Oh, that's unnecessary, son. I came to see if you guys were all right." All Might observed them in their casual clothes and realized they were about to leave. "I'm sorry, guys. I brought you flowers, since I didn't know you had already recovered," he smiled, handing them the flowers anyways. "It is a profound honor to be graced by the presence of your esteemed visit." Izuku bowed again, until he realized All Might just told him not to. "I'm sorry," he apologized, covering his mouth. Todoroki wanted to laugh right there. What was up with acting as if he had killed someone just because he bowed again? He didn't expect him to act like a hardcore fan. "It's all right," All Might patted him on the head. "I came here to tell you I am admired by the immense bravery you showed when you faced the enemy on your own. You have displayed the true spirit of heroism. Not every hero can face such threats head-on, especially at your age. Your actions have shown the world what it means to be a true hero, putting others before yourselves, overcoming fears, and standing tall in the face of danger. I'm truly impressed." He moved closer, a hand on each of their shoulders, conveying both gratitude and encouragement. All Might's words carried a weight of approval, acknowledging their growth and determination. It was a moment of recognition from the symbol of peace, a reassurance that their efforts had not gone unnoticed in the realm of heroism. Todoroki didn't particularly care, but it still felt good to be congratulated, he supposed, affecting the mix of emotions swirling within him. Todoroki, ever observant, noted the vulnerability in Midoriya's expression, a testament to the depth of his feelings. The compliment from All Might seemed to have touched a tender chord, unraveling a layer of emotions that Midoriya usually kept tightly guarded. As the unspoken connection between them lingered in the air, Todoroki could almost sense the overwhelming flood of sentiments Midoriya was experiencing. It was a profound acknowledgement from their idol, and for Midoriya, who held heroism close to his heart, it was more than just praise. It was validation, acceptance, and a reassurance that he was on the right path. Todoroki's own stoic demeanor softened as he observed the scene. There was a silent understanding between them, an acknowledgement that transcended words. In that moment, Todoroki felt a surge of respect for Midoriya, recognizing the strength it took to reveal such raw emotions, even if just for an instant. "Thank you, All Might," he replied for both of them. The speech had rendered Midoriya speechless. "I also wanted to know, how are our classmates? I haven't heard of them." All Might felt puzzled. Had no one visited them before? They had been told they had only been in the hospital for a few hours, though. It must be because of that, he concluded. Hospitals operated at a frenetic pace. Uraraka Ochako is still in the hospital. She was diagnosed with head trauma and cranial fractures. All Might observed their worried reaction. Todoroki furrowed his brows deeper than a normal human being could as Midoriya gasped. "She's currently recovering in this same hospital, and fortunately, she's awake. You can visit her if you'd like. She wanted me to express her gratitude for saving her from potential facial injuries," he said solemnly. "Of course we will visit." Midoriya spoke for both of them, eagerly. Todoroki was taken aback to realize he was also enthusiastic. In the hushed confines of the UA staff room, the air crackled with a subdued tension as teachers and staff members gathered to discuss the recent upheaval. The somber mood enveloped the room, punctuated only by the distant hum of conversations. "I never thought we'd see the day when our students faced such danger," muttered Aizawa, his usually stoic expression etched with concern. Present in the room were several other faculty members, each wearing the weight of recent events on their faces. Midnight leaned against a desk, flipping through a stack of reports. "The media is having a field day with this. It's a good thing we contained the situation quickly." Snippets of news reports echoed in the background, the television screen showing images of U.S. damaged training facility and pro-heroes in action. A collective sigh filled the room as they watched. "Uraraka's still in recovery," chimed in Recovery Girl, her gaze fixed on the small television. "Head trauma and fractures," they said. "But she's a strong one. She'll pull through." Hound Dog, U.S. Vigilant Security personnel, grunted in agreement. "We need to tighten security around here. This wasn't just an attack on our facility. It was an attack on our students. This shows that our students are capable of facing danger and surviving." They behaved with true bravery, especially these two, young Todoroki and young Midoriya. They managed to beat their leader, Shigaraki Tamura, whose name isn't registered. They must have used fake names. However, thanks to them, we can safely say that their organization will never strike again, at least not without their leader. The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of the responsibility they bore sinking in. It was a testament to the resilience of UA that, even in the face of adversity, they remained steadfast in their commitment to nurture and protect the next generation of heroes. As the adults grappled with the aftermath, UA's resilience flickered like a flame in the wind, determined to rise from the ashes and ensure the safety of its students. Izuku still remembered the conversation he had with Todoroki at the hospital. They had been there for about 2 hours before being dismissed, which made him wonder what kind of healing powers the doctors had for such accelerated recovery. At some point, Todoroki brought up Endeavour as a topic. "Midoriya, don't you know why Endeavour is training you?" Todoroki had asked, his eyes watching him curiously. He didn't seem to expect an answer, and when Izuku merely shook his head, waiting for Todoroki to elaborate, he did. "I've assumed that the old man wants me to dedicate myself more to the exercises since he enrolled me in the gym, and I no longer have to train with him. I don't know if he misses torturing someone, but I guess he wants to show me that I'm not irreplaceable," Todoroki said, a grimace of disgust appearing on his face, and Midoriya couldn't help but feel really surprised that Todoroki was so open. I have a story to tell you, Midoriya. And so he told him of 16 years of mistreatment. Endeavour, my father, Todoroki started, his voice carrying the weight of years of suppressed emotions. He's not just intense. He's a force. When I was growing up, he was fixated on creating the perfect heir, someone who could surpass even All Might. And he decided that person would be me. His eyes bore the scars of a painful history as he continued. He married my mother solely for her powerful ice quirk, thinking it would complement his fire. But the way he treated her, and all of us. Todoroki's grip on the bedsheet tightened, his knuckles turning white. He would beat me, he said. But it wasn't just me he hurt. My siblings, each with a different combination of quirks, were discarded like failures. We were nothing more than tools for him to achieve his twisted goals. A haunted look lingered in Todoroki's eyes as he revealed a painful truth. My mother couldn't take it anymore. One day, she poured boiling water over my left side, trying to erase the fire in me that reminded her of him. She was pushed to the brink of insanity and Endeavor's ambition. It tore our family apart. So when I'm telling you Endeavour isn't a man that you want to admire, I am being serious. I don't understand how you can subject yourself to his training. Izuku, still a child, gazed longingly at the other kids playing in the park. Laughter echoed as they enjoyed the simple joys of childhood. The sun painted a warm glow on the scene, a stark contrast to the shadows that lurked in Izuku's world. Dad, can I join them? Izuku asked tentatively, his eyes hopeful. His father's stern gaze met his. No, Izuku. Heroes don't waste time playing. You need to focus on becoming strong. You want to be a hero, don't you? The weight of expectation pressed down on Izuku's small shoulders. He nodded fervently, a mix of determination and desperation in his eyes. Heroes don't cry either, his father added, a hint of impatience in his voice. Toughen up, Izuku. You'll thank me later. My father, when I was little, he also took my training to an extreme level. He watched as Todoroki's eyes widened in surprise. He never hit me, however. He robbed me of my childhood and trained me until I couldn't stand on my own legs, until I couldn't control my quirk and almost burnt the house once. Sometimes I would vomit or pass out from the lack of oxygen in my body. I would burn myself by accident and keep quiet about it, because I felt he would only get angry at me. My fire is almost always blue, because my father forced me to learn to keep it that intense since my childhood. But this is how it would normally look. Midoriya ignited his index finger into a warm red flame. My father wasn't always like that. When my mom was alive, he was a normal dad. It was after her death that he decided I should be the hero he could never be. Midoriya had paused, observing his reaction. Todoroki's eyes widened in shock as Midoriya revealed the harsh reality of his childhood. The initial surprise was quickly replaced by a deep furrow in his brow, reflecting the weight of empathy he felt for his friend. Todoroki's gaze softened, and his lips, which were slightly parted in astonishment, formed into a concerned expression. The lines right above his eyebrows indicated not only the shock of the revelation, but also a genuine understanding of the pain Midoriya had endured. It was a mix of concern, shock, and empathy that played across Todoroki's face. Even if he did get out of hand sometimes, it was nothing like you had to deal with. Todoroki just noticed Midoriya's eyes were gleaming, clearly refraining from crying. You are really strong, Todoroki. What I went through, it's different. But I just wanted to share my own experience to show you that you are not alone in this, he said, his voice wavering with insecurity, but also emotional from the whole conversation. I'm sorry if I am overshadowing your experiences with my own struggles. My pain is nothing compared to. Before he could finish his sentence, Todoroki hugged him. Their beds were close, and he was fast to hug him. Do not say things like that, Todoroki almost shouted, tone serious but voice breaking. Your father laid a hand on you, more than once from what you seem to indicate. What you went through is nothing a father should do to their own child. Do not diminish your story or compare your pain like that. It's not fair to anybody." In the embrace, Todoroki held on to Midoriya tightly, and Midoriya, overwhelmed by the mixture of emotions and the comfort of a friend, let his tears flow freely. Todoroki's eyes had unshed tears, reflecting the deep impact of the revelations on both of them. The hug had served as a silent understanding between them, a shared acknowledgement of the pain each had endured, and a source of comfort in knowing they were not alone in their struggles. Midoriya remembered, and he quickly thought of something else to avoid crying. He had apologized to Todoroki for assuming he wouldn't understand, and had told him he had been worried about the way Endeavour might treat his family if this is how he treated an entire stranger. And Todoroki had also apologized for assuming he was an Endeavour fan in the first place. Izuku thought. Now it seemed that this could mean the start of a friendship. All misunderstandings cleared out. They had gone to visit Uraraka before parting ways. She laid in bed, her face and head covered in bandages, but otherwise she seemed healthy, judging by the absence of bandages Todoroki had assumed. "Uraraka, can you hear us?" Midoriya asked in an unsure tone. He didn't seem certain that she was conscious, despite the symbol of peace assuring them that thankfully she was. "Of course, Midoriya, is that you? You're the first person from the class to visit me," she said, seemingly delighted. Midoriya felt a pang of annoyance, knowing that no one else had come. But then he remembered that she had been there for the same amount of time as them. "Uraraka, how are you feeling?" Todoroki asked, concerned, entering the room with balloons that she couldn't see due to the bandages. "Todoroki, you came too." Uraraka seemed incredibly happy just to know that both of them were there. "All Might told me he would tell you how grateful I am for saving my life. But it's even better to be able to tell you in person." She tried to sit up in bed, but both insisted that she didn't need to and should rest. "That's what my parents also insisted on. But I already want to go home and then be able to go to UA. This diagnosis has kept me bedridden for too many hours." She spoke rapidly, waving her arms around to emphasize some of her words. Midoriya and Todoroki exchanged glances, silently communicating their relief that she was in good spirits despite her injuries. "Uraraka, you need to focus on getting better first," Todoroki advised, his concern evident. "You don't want to rush things and risk any complications." She pouted playfully. "Todoroki, you sound like Recovery Girl and my parents combined." "I get it. But I miss being on my feet." Midoriya chuckled. "I can relate. When I was in the hospital, all I wanted to do was get back to training. But you need to take the time to heal properly." Todoroki nodded in agreement. "He's right. You don't want to end up back here because you pushed yourself too hard." Uraraka sighed dramatically. Fine. I'll be a good patient and rest. But promise me you'll both fill me in on what happened." All Might said it was a big deal, and I hate feeling left out. "Absolutely," Midoriya reassured her. "We'll tell you everything. And once you're back on your feet, we can all train together again." "That sounds like a plan," Todoroki added with a small smile. "But for now, focus on getting better. We'll be here for you." "Uraraka, I heard about your condition, and I came as fast as I could." Surprising the three of them, Ida stood on the door. "Are you okay? Do you feel any pain?" "Midoriya and Todoroki, my deep apologies for not saluting you. I need to know how you are doing as well, but it's good to see you back on your feet." He spoke as excitedly as Uraraka, expressing himself through the movements of his arms as well in exaggerated manners. Uraraka gave a thumbs up, Todoroki's small smile becoming more noticeable and Midoriya's too. The four continued to chat, their conversation weaving between light-hearted banter and genuine concern for Uraraka's well-being. In that hospital room, a bond between them strengthened, forged through shared experiences and a commitment to support each other through thick and thin. The news of Endeavor's unexpected visit to US spread like wildfire through the halls, creating a buzz of anticipation among students and faculty alike. Whispers and curious glances followed him as he made his way to the familiar building. Endeavor's stern expression remained unchanged, focused solely on his mission. Shoto and Midoriya, engrossed in a conversation about the upcoming festival, looked up simultaneously as they sensed an unfamiliar presence. Their eyes widened as they recognized Endeavour approaching them. The surrounding students couldn't help but stare, their surprise evident. Shoto, Midoriya, Endeavour greeted them with a nod, acknowledging their presence. "I'd like to have lunch with both of you. Follow me." The invitation hung in the air, leaving the duo puzzled. They exchanged uncertain glances, contemplating the unexpected turn of events. However, Endeavor's commanding presence left little room for refusal. With a shared nod, Shoto and Midoriya fell into step behind him as they ventured towards the school cafeteria. The journey through the school corridors felt surreal, the attention of their peers intensifying. Endeavour seemed indifferent to the stares, his focus unwavering. Shoto and Midoriya exchanged a few whispered words, attempting to decipher the reason behind this impromptu lunch invitation. As they reached the bustling cafeteria, Endeavour led them to a secluded table. The surrounding students continued to steal glances, their curiosity reaching a fever pitch. Endeavour waited for them on the table until they got back with their food, and he finally spoke. "There is a reason why I called you here, Shoto," Endeavour began, his tone cutting through the ambient noise. "You need to cut out the rebellion phase. The festival is approaching, and you can't afford to hold back. The world won't wait for you to sort out your issues." Shoto's expression remained impassive, but the intensity in his father's words lingered. Midoriya, keenly aware of the tension, focused on his own plate, but couldn't help but feel the weight of the conversation. "Is that all?" He would have normally stayed quiet and uncaring, but Midoriya's presence gave him the incentive necessary to speak. He realized. "I'm sure you came all the way here just to tell us that." No, Endeavour furrowed his eyebrows, clearly annoyed, but decided to ignore his son. "You don't have to rely on anyone for this event. You can't afford to lose either, because then people will see you as weaklings. Also, I have a proposition for you too. You two have potential, more than you realize. The path to becoming a great hero isn't just about school and exams. It's about real-world experience. Shoto, Midoriya, I want you to consider becoming my sidekicks." The gravity of his words hung in the air. Shoto and Midoriya exchanged surprised glances, fully aware that such an arrangement would be illegal. Endeavour, however, seemed undeterred. Legality aside, greatness often involves breaking a few rules. "With your abilities, you could learn more in a week at my side than you would in months at UA. The world needs heroes who can stand on their own, not just those who excel in school." The offer lingered, tempting and fraught with the complications of legality. Shoto's stoic expression remained unchanged, while Midoriya grappled with the weight of the decision before them. Endeavour, observing their reactions, awaited their response, fully aware that he had thrown them a curveball that could alter the trajectory of their hero journey. "I think I need some time to think about this," Midoriya said, uneasy. "You can just come here and propose something completely illegal, old man." "It's even worse because you are dragging Midoriya into this, who, I must remind you, it's your new protege, who you are technically supposed to mentor. I am in awe. Father, I really am. Let us go, Midoriya." He stood up, waiting for him, as Izuku followed, clearly nervous by the way he glanced back to Endeavour. "Todoroki, aren't we supposed to just leave him in the cafeteria?" "It's fine." The old man practically demanded this happen. "I can't believe he would just go here and suggest something illicit that not only could ruin our careers if someone found out, but also just be here and say it out loud in a public space," Todoroki said, his tone dead serious and his eyebrows furrowed in a troubled expression. Wait, is he still there? Todoroki poked his head from the wall, watching Endeavour gather his stuff and leave as everyone on the cafeteria watched him. Todoroki couldn't help but start laughing. The old man had to leave. Izuku, puzzled, stared at him as he kept laughing on his own, thinking that he had never seen Todoroki laugh like that, so careless and free. Midoriya couldn't help but starting to giggle as well, as his laugh was contagious. Soon, they were both laughing until they had tears on their eyes. Todoroki was laughing just because of his old man, and Midoriya because his laugh was contagious. Soon they were kneeling on the floor, grabbing their stomachs as people passed by the hallway, staring at them as they walked past. Are we going to accept his offer? Midoriya asks once their laugh dies out. Does that mean you want to join him? He sarcastically says. The laugh starts again, and this time they drop on the floor. Uraraka stared from her seat to the hallway where Izuku and Todoroki were laying the floor. She had bandages over her head. She had insisted she go to school after a week had passed. Ida, they are laughing, Uraraka pointed, staring at them in surprise. Ida looked back to where she was pointing, observing how Todoroki was laying on the ground as his chest contracted, and Midoriya was on his knees right next to him, head low as he laughed as well. Seems like they are having a good time. Maybe Endeavour had good news for them. I didn't take our number 2 hero for the funny type. Ida analyzed the situation, looking for an explanation for what his eyes were seeing. Maybe. Or they are laughing at him. They left him alone on the cafeteria, after all. She felt puzzled. It has to be some kind of inner joke between them. Ida was shocked, nonetheless.